is in the name of a children ensemble in North America? This is the question I raise in my paper. However, this is a new area of study. It is an unresearched topic, and there is no such source like the Chinese famous local delicious food and special products, for example, or a comprehensive lexicon, a platform from which I can extract the research data, and after wrapping it around my small cookies, offer an in-depth analysis. Greetings, everyone. My name is Daniela Ivanova-Nyberg, and I'm an artistic director at the Bulgarian Culture and Heritage Center of Seattle. Many thanks to the program committee for accepting my proposal. The topic of names of the North American Bulgarian groups and ensembles bridges dance and migration studies with onomastic studies, and I believe it is a topic full of potential. Today, I would like to discuss this potential and share some of my initial findings. And before doing this, let me share my screen. The question in my title comprises several sub-questions. Among these, what was the urge, the motivation to establish a Bulgarian children's dance group or an ensemble in North America? What kind of motives were preferred? What kind of embedded messages may be recognized? What criteria were executed in choosing a name? What inspirations? To what extent are the children's folk dance activities and names similar to or different from those in Bulgaria? How the establishment of a children group and its naming is related to the establishment and naming of a group for adults and vice versa? This scope is obviously too large for a single paper, and some of its aspects I will only briefly outline. For my study, I rely on my ongoing fieldwork on the Bulgarian cultural activities in the United States and Canada since 2011. I also step upon my lengthy research on the Bulgarian folk dance ensemble as a cultural phenomenon in Bulgaria. And now, let us begin from there with an elaboration on the term ensemble. The term ensemble and the urge to perform. In Bulgaria, the term ensemble combined with folk is understood in two ways. On the one hand, it is related to a performance entity consisting of orchestra, choir, and dancers. On the other hand, in the 1970s, the term ensemble also penetrated the semi-professional dance world. It was borrowed because of its mere etymology implying dancing in unison, in perfect proportions, costumes, and smiles. The term is now profoundly culturally embedded. It passed the borders and immigrated to North America together with these Bulgarians looking for a better life for themselves and their children. I have to say, though, that only a few groups in North America choose to call themselves ensembles, yet some did. And the ensemble model was a model to follow, even though some groups decided to stick to classical folk dance patterns and children's games. Now, let us see when, why, and how the urge for performance appeared. Cultural activities of the Bulgarian communities in North America. Picture at large. After the fall of the Berlin Wall, nearly 2 million Bulgarians left their home country and migrated to countries in Western Europe, North America, Australia, and other places. Among them, there were also professional choreographers, musicians, and dancers, and people who had at least some folk dance experience. Most Bulgarian cultural organizations and schools were established in the past 15 years by new immigrants who came to the States and Canada in the 1990s. There are very few exceptions of old immigrants centers. After their settlement and after going through processes of acculturation, education, and adaptation in general, Some enthusiasts began thinking of establishing a Sunday school, cultural center, or cultural and educational programs, along with folk dance classes for children and adults. Meanwhile, many children were born by Bulgarian couples or partners of mixed marriages. Many parents started to realize that they have to do something so that their children, if not speaking Bulgarian fluently, will learn some Bulgarian by being involved in Bulgarian cultural activities. The first Sunday schools appeared at the beginning of our century, and some of them began offering classes in folk dancing. The people who initiated such schools and cultural organizations were of various educational and professional backgrounds. However, they all wanted to unite the community in the name of Bulgaria and its rich culture. In many states, the Saturday or Sunday classes with children provoked parents' interest in getting together and dancing for fun. In other places, the adults began getting together first. Some groups wanted to do recreational dancing. Others had a clear idea that they aimed to build an ensemble and perform. There were also places where children's groups were established independently of a school and developed their activities as separate entities. Sooner or later, all these groups began to perform, so they needed a name. I first combined ethnochronological and onomastic approaches in writing a paper entitled, "What's Your Name?" Names and Cultural Representations of Bulgarian folk dance groups in North America. This paper was presented during the 45th International Council for Traditional Music World Conference in Bangkok in 2019, and it was well received. In preparing this paper, I reached out to my contacts, mostly groups participating in Verea Festival in Chicago, conducted surveys and interviews, and began building my Chinese cookbook, if you allow me the expression. I ended up with more than 50 names of adults groups in the United States and about 10 in Canada. I left the children's groups for another research, and I distinguished a number of categories. This article is available online on academia, so I'm not gonna go into details. Methodology. To see the picture at large, I started a document where I listed the information I had for the existence of a cultural organization or organizations, schools, websites. I checked websites of the State Agency for Bulgarians Abroad, the website of the Bulgarian Embassy in Washington, D.C., the Association of Bulgarian Schools in the United States, and many other sources, including websites and Facebook pages. As for the meaning behind names, I relied on my surveys and interviews. So, what were my first observations? Some organizations prefer to keep the institutional affiliation. Here, a children's group that occasionally perform at community events and festivals introduces itself as a children dance group at the name of the school or the institution. There is a considerable overlap of names in this case because many schools choose the exact prominent Bulgarian figures for the school's patron. Other organizations decided to distinguish the dance activities by giving the dance group a separate name. A good example here would be the school in Minneapolis, St. Paul in Minnesota. In 2011, the name of the Bulgarian school, Saint Cyril and Methodius, was chosen after a survey that the driving committee conducted with the local Bulgarian community. With the successful start of the school, with its language and dance classes, the board decided to have a separate name for the group of dancing children, so they picked the name Shevica, a term to describe a piece of traditional Bulgarian embroidery. According to Kristina Markova, a representative of the board, the school wanted this activity to stand out. To us, quote, Shivica means tradition, magic, something colorful, something intertwined with our DNA. So it just popped up as the best name, and we embraced it, end quote. There are often two formations at a given cultural organization, one for parents and one for children. Sometimes they blend. An example here is the case with Antica Bulgaria Ensemble adults and Martinichki Art School children in San Francisco. The driving force, or they were, better say, they were both fruits of love and devotion of Tanya Kostova, who had a rich professional dance and choreographic career in Bulgaria. Tanya came to the States in the 1990s and served as a community leader in the area for nearly 25 years. She is also the founder of Antica Bulgaria Festival in San Francisco. The name of Martinichki is not only an excellent example in showing the relationship between an adults and children's group founded by the same person. These names are both related to its leader's personal and professional journey. Moreover, they both evoke connotation of the Bulgarian cultural origin from ancient time. The implied relationships between these two was walking her talk for Tanya. She involved both parents and adults in learning together traditional songs, dances, ritual practices, arts, and crafts. However, another thing is noticeable in this example, the appearance of a diminutive form. Martinichki is a plural of Martinichka, and Martinichka is a diminutive of Martenica, an Asian amulet of twisted white and red threads. Bulgarians create such charms from unknown times, wear such amulets on their wrists and coats from March 1st to the day they see the first stork. It is a beloved cultural practice until today for the opportunity to embrace the unity of white with its purity and red associated with blood, life, and vitality. In addition, March gives the start of vigorous outdoor rituals for both children and adults. Tanya introduced all of this to her two groups, one big family. And let me continue with other examples. With their association with something small, the diminutive forms are presented in names such as Horce, the diminutive from Horo, the traditional way Bulgarians dance in a chain, circle, or semicircle by holding hands. In my example, Horo is the name of an adult ensemble established in Chicago 20 years ago, and its children's formation, Horce, that was founded 15 years ago. Chicago is an exceptional case. It is often called the Bulgarian city with its large Bulgarian population. According to various sources, the Bulgarian population ranges between 250 and 300,000 Bulgarian. There are 3 Bulgarian churches, 13 Bulgarian schools, diverse cultural and art organizations, Bulgarian shops and restaurants. And along with Horo and Horce, there are several folk dance groups for children and adults. There is even a Bulgarian kindergarten offering folk dance classes, such as the kindergarten Sinuto Meche, the Blue Little Bear, which named their dance groups of toddlers Veselo Horce, Merry Dance. The idea of envisioned and desired transition is visible in the names of Ensemble Verea, adults, and Malkata Verea, Little Verea, children. Gorana Dance and Gorana Junior ensembles in New York, Seattle Cheta and Seattle Cheta Mladi Young in Seattle. The transition is not that obvious in some cases, like in Biva and Vodica. Biva is abbreviation of Bulgarian Spring in America, written in Cyrillic. It is also an old expression of an agreement for something to happen, to come to life, to become. The name is linked to the associated children's group, Budica, which is diminutive of water. And these groups are both founded at the Bulgarian school in Sunnyvale. One may notice a similar relationship, although without using a diminutive, by juxtaposing the names of the group Kitka, a nosegay, a flower bouquet, a women's group from Vancouver, and Prolet, children's from the same place. In some cases, the diminutive form is derived by the name of an institution. Such is the case with Dimitrovce Ensemble from Toronto, named after St. Demetrius Bulgarian Eastern Orthodox Church in Toronto. Dimiter, at the same time, is the personal name of the ensemble's artistic director. Few examples in pictures. Here is Biva with its founder and the teens. Here is Shivica, and here is the kindergarten with another example from Atlanta. So, factors under consideration. Various factors influence the choice of a name. For example, the personal and professional background of the namer, the local specifics. This may offer inspiration, and in the examples with Shivica, Mr. Christina Marco mentioned that Bulgarians like the Tapestries, local international dance organization, the desire to find a unique name, the practicality, one word, easy to pronounce, easy to translate. And there are more factors and directions for further research. Such a dimension is the possibility of conducting parallel research involving leaders from Bulgaria and across the ocean who picked identical names. In various cases, adults and children groups wear the same name. Such examples are names related to dance, such as Hopatrop, Shivica, and others. Back in Minneapolis, after Shivica was born, parents who had never danced before began expressing interest in folk dancing. And soon after Shivica, the group of enthusiastic adults started practicing regularly and decided to name themselves Bulgari. A beautiful example of the complexity in verticality in cultural transmission. During my interviews, I encountered several times the intention of the group leader, their name to be unique. Such was the desire of Biljana Hristova, a founder of Viti Gaetani children's group from Montreal. Gaetan, singular, means woolen braid, and Gaetani is plural. The adjectives Viti, curvy, to Gaetani is again related to traditional Bulgarian costumes. Summing up, something important came out of placing together the names of adults and children's groups and ensembles. The children's groups' names contain all of the hope of parents and community leaders, their offspring, to keep the connection to the homeland. They are as much wishful as they are blessings. The interconnection between the groups of adults and children in North America is more treasured than in Bulgaria because this is the future of an immigrant community. The research showed that the beauty of traditional dance costumes, a historical name, or a respected patron served as a source of inspiration for both adults and children's groups and ensembles. Simultaneously, some ritual practices, fairy tales, such was the case with Martinichki or Zlatnata Yavalka Golden Apple children's program in California, specifically impacted the children's program's names. In addition, diminutive forms were attributive to children only. This paper did not aim to do a comprehensive deconstructing of the why. It aimed instead to touch upon the messages that both children and adults Bulgarian ensembles abroad aimed to convey. Instead of conclusion, in reflecting on my work with Medina Pitka Children's Folklore Group at the Bulgarian Culture and Heritage Center of Seattle, I may say that my story, as the name of Martinichki, came because of my work with a children ensemble of musicians, singers, and dancers in Bulgaria in the mid-1990s. At the establishment of this ensemble, I proposed to my colleagues, a prominent orchestra conductor, a choir director, and my co-choreographer, the name Medina Pitka, literally around honey bread. To me, this name combined various meanings. On the one hand, it was related to Bulgarian folk tradition, the circle, the vital place that the bread plays in ritual practices, the symbolism of the honey with its associations with the sun. But simultaneously, this name was not related thoroughly to the traditional past. This bread is round as a dense circle. It moves, and it is as sweet as our children are sweet and dear to us. So the implied message for Medina Pitka was to nourish the souls and the senses of performers and the audience. When I was invited by the Bulgarian Culture and Heritage Center of Seattle to establish a children's group in 2013, I did not think twice, but said, Medina Pitka. And now I cannot help myself but think of Schutz's approach in understanding motives that, according to him, could be generally intentional, i.e. doing something in order to, or reflectional because of. I believe that the answer to the question in my title, what is in the name of a children ensemble in North America, rests in the combination of in order to and because of. Thank you for your attention.
Much. Do we have any questions for Daniela?
I can add something that I didn't include in the presentation. And it was actually a song that inspired me early in the 1990s. And I didn't include any musical examples because of the time, but since this is the end of the conference, if you allow me, I can give you one. It goes like this. Огряла месечинка, огряла месечинка, аляна галяна портокаляна, благодушка медена шикеряна. So, and many of the names for both adults and children are related to the music, to the motifs from songs, and also to this specifics of Bulgarian music with asymmetrical meters. So this was my my belief that it is absolutely full of potential topic, because we can reach not only children and adults in the States, but actually immigrants outside Bulgaria. So to me, it was exciting first step in this direction.
That was absolutely beautiful. And I agree about how you started the presentation saying that this bridges the migration studies and onomastic studies, which we need more of. So I appreciate it. It looks like we have a question in the chat. Do the children still stay as involved as they become teenagers?
Some do, some don't. So what I said at the last slide was actually a slide of my adult group, Seattle Cheta. And since I had parents and adults, so my hope is now, since I'm having teenagers, that gradually, since these children grew up in this environment, it will be natural to them to want to join the adults ensemble. Yeah. but we need to start with a really young age. It is very difficult to start with teenagers when they are already fully immersed in the American culture. So really have to start at an early age.
I have a question I could ask if no one else has questions. You said that the names of the children's groups tend to keep the connection to the homeland. And I'm wondering if you think there's an educational piece to that. So if they're doing that in order to kind of teach the kids, the students who were raised here, maybe about the culture there and through the naming. Do you think?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So this was the example with Martinichki, actually, because by presenting the name as a Martinichki, so there is a story about Martinichki, what is how to, not only how to connect white and red and how to prepare this amulet, but all this, how actually these children's games are related to Bulgarian past, what they represent, and all the symbolism behind this. And so in case with Martinichki, it was incredible because now Tanya Kostova, the founder, moved back to Bulgaria. But because of her work with the community in San Francisco, actually half of the ensemble moved to Bulgaria also. After 25 years of being. And one of incredible statements that I'm hearing by doing these interviews is that, for example, with the case with Tanya, one of the participants who is an engineer said, with this involvement in folk dance tradition, it is not like shutting the door to American culture. It is opening two doors simultaneously, because most of these people have never ever danced before, never ever think of dancing or joining ensemble. So it is really something that opened here in the States, being away of the home country. And not for only Bulgarians, not for all Bulgarians. I have to say this. Specific part of the community have this need to connect to the home culture.
Do you think there are other values besides that connection to the homeland that the children's group names reflect? Because I heard you say water and there's floral, like the nosegay, and the kind of call to nature. Do you think maybe that's reflective of the values of the creator of the name? And
yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. It reflects the value of the namer. And with this case with Biva, so the person who named the Bulgarian group Biva, it's Bulgarski izvor в America. So it is Bulgarian spring. So it is the idea of the water, the purity. And Vodica, it is really related to this idea to keep this purity, to keep this purity in relationship, but also in the belief that this pure water is something that we need for the future. And this is the future. So it is very, very multifaceted in this way. And in the case with looking for a at the background of the namer, what came out to me from these interviews was how some early memories, like in the case with Tanya, she found this children's book on Martinichki when she was a little kid, somewhere in somebody's apartment, and many years ago this returned back, this came back. And so this way of research, what are the things that are impacting our decisions, are absolutely fascinating topics for me to follow with by recording stories.
Well, thank you so much. I didn't even know ethnochoreology existed, that was a body of study. I was a dancer for 20 years, so I'm personally very interested in your work too. So thank you so much for sharing today.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for moderating. Thanks everybody for listening.